The longest dynasties in history, a journey through time. Once upon a time, in the vast and colorful history of humanity, some families didn't just leave their mark. They built entire civilizations and kept control for centuries, even millennia. These were the longest ruling dynasties, families that held power for what seemed like forever. Their stories are filled with drama, triumphs, and even a bit of mystery. Let's travel back in time and discover the tales of these enduring rulers. 10. The Ming Dynasty, Porcelain and Paranoia, 276 years. Our story begins in China, where the Ming Dynasty rose to power in 1368 after kicking out the Mongols. They were builders and dreamers, constructing the Forbidden City in Beijing and reinforcing the Great Wall. The Mings were famous for their porcelain, especially the iconic blue and white designs that are still treasured today. The era saw major global trade interactions, particularly during the reign of Emperor Yongle, who commissioned the famous voyages of Zheng He. But life wasn't all smooth sailing. One emperor, terrified of assassins, locked himself in his palace for years. Imagine running a kingdom without ever stepping outside. In the end, the dynasty fell when rebellion and invasion overwhelmed their once mighty empire. 9. The Romanovs, Glitter, Glory, and Grief, 304 years. In snowy Russia, the Romanov family ruled from 1613 to 1917. They were masters of expansion, turning a small kingdom into a massive empire. Peter the Great built the magnificent city of St. Petersburg, while Catherine the Great became famous for her intelligence and reforms. But the Romanovs had a tragic end. Nicholas II, the last Tsar, struggled to manage World War I and internal unrest. Things took a darker turn with the mysterious Rasputin, a monk who influenced the royal family. In 1917, the Russian Revolution ended their reign and led to the execution of Tsar Nicholas II and his family in 1918. 8. The Zhou Dynasty, Mandate of Heaven, 790 years. Long before the Romanovs or the Mings, the Zhou Dynasty ruled China for nearly 8 centuries, starting in 1046 BCE. They had a clever idea called the Mandate of Heaven. It meant that as long as a ruler was just and fair, the gods would let them stay in power. But if things went wrong, famine, war, or rebellion, it was a sign the mandate was lost. The Zhou kings were wise, guiding China through a time of great cultural and philosophical growth. This was when Confucianism and Taoism were born, shaping Chinese thinking for thousands of years. However, power eventually slipped from their hands, and their dynasty crumbled into smaller, warring states. 7. The Ottomans, Empires and Kebabs, 623 years. The Ottoman dynasty began in 1299 with a man named Osman. His descendants built a vast empire that stretched across 3 continents. Their greatest ruler, Suleiman the Magnificent, made Istanbul the heart of a cultural and architectural renaissance. The Ottomans weren't just warriors, they were organizers too. They created systems that blended Islamic law with local customs. Their legacy includes stunning buildings like the Hagia Sophia and, of course, delicious kebabs. But by the 20th century, the empire had grown too big and too old to survive. After World War I, the dynasty came to an end. 6. The Habsburgs, the Masters of Marriage, 640 years. In Europe, the Habsburg family was the ultimate power couple. Starting in 1278, they ruled Austria, Spain, and much of Central Europe. How did they do it? By marrying strategically. A Habsburg always seemed to have a spouse in a neighboring kingdom, making their family tree more like a web. They were also patrons of art and music, turning Vienna into a cultural hub. However, their habit of marrying close relatives caused some, let's say, genetic issues. The dynasty finally fell after World War I, but their palaces and legacy still shine. 5. The Ethiopian Solomonic Dynasty, a royal legend, 704 years. In Africa, the Solomonic dynasty ruled Ethiopia from 1270 to 1974. They claimed to be descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, a claim that made them feel both regal and untouchable. The Solomonic rulers kept their country independent during the age of colonization, famously defeating Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896. Their last emperor, Haile Selassie, became a global symbol of African pride. But internal unrest and famine led to the dynasty's fall, ending one of the longest royal legacies in history. 4. The Chola dynasty, Masters of the Sea, 1,579 years. Traveling to southern India, we meet the Cholas, who ruled for over 1,500 years. Starting in 300 BCE, they were not only powerful kings, but also brilliant sailors. Their navy controlled trade routes, and their influence spread to Southeast Asia. The Cholas are remembered for their stunning temples, like the Brihadiswarar Temple, and for promoting art and literature. Their rule ended when rival kingdoms rose, but their culture remains deeply embedded in Indian history. 3. The Chinese imperial dynasties, combined. Builders of civilization, 2,100 plus years. China holds a unique record for its long chain of imperial dynasties, starting with the Qin in 221 BCE and lasting until 1912. Each dynasty brought something new. The Han gave us paper, the Tang created poetry, and the Ming perfected porcelain. Other contributions include gunpowder, the compass, and the Silk Road, which connected China to Europe and the Middle East. Through wars and invasions, China's emperors held on to power with a mix of innovation and tradition. Even when one dynasty fell, another rose, keeping the idea of imperial rule alive for over 2 millennia. 2. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt, god-kings of the Nile, 3,000 plus years. Now we go to Egypt, where the pharaohs ruled for over 3,000 years. Beginning around 3,100 BCE, they built the pyramids of Giza, crafted remarkable achievements in mathematics, medicine, and engineering, and declared themselves gods. Egypt thrived under their leadership, creating a civilization that influenced the ancient world. They developed hieroglyphic writing, one of the earliest forms of recorded communication. But invasions from Rome and others ended their reign. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, famously tried to save Egypt but lost to the Roman Empire in 30 BCE. Finally, we arrive in Japan, where the Yamato dynasty has been ruling since 660 BCE. They are the longest reigning dynasty in the world, and they're still going. Japan's emperors once had immense power, but over time, they became more symbolic. Even today, Emperor Naruhito represents the heart of Japan's traditions and history. Their ability to adapt while respecting the past has kept the Yamato dynasty alive for over 2,600 years. And there you have it, the stories of the 10 longest dynasties in history. They remind us that while rulers come and go, the legacy of great leadership can last for generations, or even forever.